guys, LeAnna here, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about something that's a little bit off topic from what I normally discuss on my channel, and that would be orca whales, specifically southern resident orca whales that call the waters off the coast of Washington State and British Columbia home. So before I dive into it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe and click the little notification bell so you know when I upload videos every Tuesday and Friday. Okay. Let's move on to the whales. Probably wondering, who are the southern resident orcas? Have I ever seen them? And my answer is, if you've seen Free Willy 1, 2, or I think even 3, then yes, you have. They're the whales that were showcased and featured in the beginning, those opening credits with the beautiful scenery of all the whales in the wild. That's them. And actually, Free Willy 2 was filmed in the San Juan Islands, which is where these whales call home. The sad part about that is a lot of those whales that you see in those movies are now deceased. So in case you're wondering, what was that clip right at the beginning? That was actually from my trip in 2009 when I went to Washington State. That was, I think, the first time I ever saw orcas in the wild. And I didn't catch them on tape, but that's where I actually saw Ruffles, who was the main orca featured in the opening credits for Free Willy and Free Willy 2. He's the one with the really tall dorsal fin that kind of waves like a Ruffles chip. So I did see him then, which I'm so thankful for because he did pass away the following summer, but I don't think we caught him on tape. However, please excuse the footage. It was from 2009, so remember how cameras were back then, and also the fact that we were on a moving boat, so just remember that one. In case you don't know, June is Orca Awareness Month specifically for these orcas. There are only 72 of them left in the wild. Only 72. And I know that kind of sounds like a big number, but when you look at other pods from other whales, whether they're transient or they live maybe northern more in Alaska, or they're off the coast of Scotland or Iceland over there, and they have hundreds and hundreds, 72 really isn't a lot. And of those 72, the vast majority are past reproductive age, which means things are not looking good for the southern residents. Now, I know you're probably wondering, why are you talking about the southern resident whales? Like, this seems like a really random topic, but if you couldn't tell, the southern resident orcas are very near and dear to my heart. They're like my soul animal, if you will. Which is why, if you've ever noticed in the background of most of my vlogs, I have this little guy here. This was actually a gift to me, but it was carved by a Haida Native American, and it's the this is the Haida symbol for orca, and he's always on my wall. I love him so much. I actually have, and I'm going to show you back here, this was actually a gift from the first grade classroom that I used to work in because I love whales so much, and when I was a sign language interpreter, so it's the sign for whale, which, hey, let's learn the sign for whale. This would be whale. So your hands like this, whale. Kind of looks like a whale tail. So that's what that is. Getting back on topic, these whales are actually endangered. They're on the endangered species list, and they're highly at risk of just becoming extinct, I would say, within the next 20 years. Easily, we could see them go extinct within the next 10 to 20 years. So why should we even care about the southern resident orcas? Like, who cares? Well, first of all, orca whales are the top predator in the ocean, meaning nothing feeds on an orca whale. Yes, they even eat sharks. Great white sharks actually run from orca whales. Not specifically the residents, but we'll get to that one in a minute. They have so much impact on the whole ecosystem just in their little area that if they were to disappear, the effects of that would be detrimental and devastating to the entire environment. And if you need a more monetary reason, which shame on you, you shouldn't need a monetary reason, but if you do, the orca whale, or I should just say whale watching in general, is such a huge tourism industry, especially for the small towns like Friday Harbor, which is one of my favorite places in the entire world, or Orcas Island, the San Juan Islands up there, and even the small towns in Canada. These whales bring them income. There's people whose whole businesses revolve around this. So obviously if they go away, there goes the businesses. Just in case if you needed that little bit. So what are some things affecting their population? First of all, and this is my belief, this is the worst one of them all, would be lack of food. So if you're going, hey, but I've seen videos of whales like eating seals and going after the babies and other whales, and these are not the residents. Those are actually transient orcas. Transient meaning they move over long distances, and they actually don't even intermingle. So the transients and the residents don't really mix. Like, the transients come into town, the residents kind of go away, the transients leave, the residents come back. They don't like each other for the most part. The transients are the ones that you see on those videos eating the baby seals off the beach, eating the other whales. You see all of those shock and awe ones where they're like, look at this orca, it's taking down this giant, humpback whale, or this whale, whatever. And those are the transients. The residents eat fish, and their main source of fish is Chinook salmon. Chinook salmon, their numbers have dwindled. I can't even come up with a word for how far their numbers have tanked over the last decade. And this is due a lot in part, besides pollution, which we'll get to here in a minute, farming. And I know you're gonna go, well, wait a minute, farming salmon, is that a thing? Yes, it is. The problem actually with farming salmon isn't that they're going out there and they're like looking for salmon in the water and taking them. That's not what farming salmon is. What I mean by that is they have sea pens where they breed salmon in these cramped little tiny spaces. There's a lot of things wrong with this, and I'll just kind of briefly tell you what's wrong, but I will also be putting a bunch of links down below, so if you want to learn more or read more about it or want to know how you can help, all that stuff will be down below. With the farm salmon, the problem began, this was actually decades ago, it has to be decades ago. Man, I'm so bad with time lately. First of all, a sea pen, in case you don't know what that is, because I know that if you're not really in that world, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. Essentially, instead of having a fish tank, which would be in a building somewhere where they would breed them, they put nets out in the ocean, and they put nets to be a pen. Like, they pen them in, and then they'll put a whole bunch of baby fish, however they do their science there, and they breed them in there. Now, this has a lot of problems. If you can imagine, they have these little pens and they're cramming thousands of fish in there, things are gonna get pretty cramped. And what does cramping bring but illness, disease, malnutrition, all kinds of stuff, right? Even just fish kind of just being dead in the water. So you have all of these illnesses and all that kind of stuff that just runs out of the fish pens, and it goes right into this water. It goes right into the ocean. It doesn't get stopped somewhere or filtered out. It goes into the ocean. So it's bringing all those kinds of illnesses that can affect the salmon out to the actual wild salmon. So that is hurting the population of the salmon that are in the wild naturally. Then the other side of that coin, related to the sea pens as well, is the fact that they are actually Atlantic salmon. So I'm specifically talking about the pens that they put out in these waters, because we were talking about these orcas specifically. So they put Atlantic salmon in there, which, if you're going, well, what's the big deal? They're both oceans. Atlantic salmon are much, much more aggressive than Pacific salmon. And of course, everybody voiced their concerns when they were putting these sea pens in, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, you're putting Atlantic salmon in here. They're gonna probably get out, and it's really gonna hurt our natural population. And of course, the big execs sat up in their high ivory tower and went, they're never gonna escape. And in like Titanic fashion, that was the first thing they did. Now you've got all these wild Atlantic salmon who are much more aggressive, getting out into the regular ecosystem with the Pacific salmon, and they're not doing so good. So the Atlantic salmon are taking over whole populations and just basically killing other fish. To go along with the food, so you've got the pen that's leaking diseases, illnesses, I mean, whatever comes along with having dead fish. Plus they pump them, generally they pump them full of antibiotics, pesticides, and also pink dye. So if you are one of those people who are like, oh my God, but I love salmon, there's a reason why you're gonna wanna get wild caught salmon. And also do not buy Chinook salmon, because you're taking them away from the orcas. But these farm salmon, they actually inject dye into them to make them pink, because even if you don't eat salmon, you probably know that salmon is pink. Well, the farm salmon is dyed. So just so you know that that's what you're eating, if you need another, like, I guess, personal reason to like want to save animals. So you've got all of this stuff that's just flowing into the water. So it's already kind of polluting the water. It's hurting the natural population of salmon that are out there. And when I say salmon, I'm going to specifically focus in on Chinook. There are other types of salmon that the orcas do eat, but Chinook is like 90% of their diet. So when I say salmon, I'm going to mean Chinook salmon. The other side to that coin is that the population of the native Chinook salmon hasn't been able to bounce back since they put up a bunch of dams. And there's a river out there called the Snake River, and there's like 3 or 4 dams along it, and there's been a movement to try to get these dams taken down, which they're not really being used anymore, or the amount of energy that they're producing is extremely minimal. So everybody's been trying to get these dams removed for years, because of the fact that if you take the dam away, it's going to open up these whole breeding grounds for these salmon, because this Snake River was a really high traffic area for the Chinook salmon to want to breed in. So you take it away. That doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So they're trying to show that, hey, if you take all these dams away, the fish are going to return back. And I believe, I can't remember which dam they did, but they did take one down, and the salmon did start to bounce back. But unfortunately, it's not big enough to make an impact. When you think you've got 72 orcas that are weighing thousands and thousands of pounds each, and they've each got to eat, you need a lot of salmon. So we need to get those other dams down, which is why I'm wearing my little Breach the Snake River Dams button. I would tell you where I got these from, but she doesn't have her store anymore. So I think she's got her own website now, Kohalakai, so I will link her down below as well. That's why I'm wearing this pin, because we need to take those dams down. Food is the number one reason, I think, why the Southern Resident Orcas are not bouncing back. And what I mean by not bouncing back is there was a huge capture back in the 70s called the Pen Cove capture. Disaster, terrifying, whatever you want to call it. They took like 50, 60 whales or something that day for the captivity industry, which that's not what this topic is about. However, they took a ton of whales. And fun fact, the only surviving whale of the ones that they took is Tokate, who is renamed Lolita, and she's actually in the Miami Sea Aquarium, and she's by herself. That could be a whole other vlog as well. I will link it. I will leave information for her down below. She needs to be released back into the sea pen, and yes, there is a plan for her. But they haven't been able to bounce back since that, and that was in the 70s. So they're having like a really hard time because they took a bunch of, they took pretty much babies and young, like reproductive females. So it's taking a long time for them to even come back this far. So you've got a dwindling population of fish, meaning that they're malnourished. This was even a huge discussion a couple of years ago when my son was being born. There was a story that went global. It was a viral, I don't want to say sensation because that makes it sound like it was a really positive thing, but it wasn't. It went viral, and it was the mom orca, whose number escapes me right now. She had a baby, and it was probably alive for a few minutes at birth. They're not entirely sure because they didn't see the birth happen. But she pushed around that dead baby for like 16 days. 16 days, y'all. And they think the reason the baby didn't make it was because the mom was also malnourished. So there was probably a nutrient deficiency somewhere. Nutrient deficiency somewhere. Guys, I can't English today. But she carried him around, or she carried that baby around for 16 days. So much so that legislature was getting so overwhelmed with responses from across the world saying, hey, you need to do something. I mean, look at these poor whales. This mom is dragging her baby around, trying to, like, it was kind of going, hey, humans, wake up. Like, you need to help us. There's something here. There's something going wrong. You really need to step up your game. So if you guys don't remember that one, I will also link that. That was actually super heartbreaking. I was actually giving birth to my son at the time that story was going on. So I felt kind of like a big connection with that mom. It was hard. At the same time, they were looking at the other babies in the pod when they were babies at that time, and they are malnourished. You could see like the parts of their melon, which is like the big bulbous part of their forehead, was kind of sinking down, which means malnutrition. Malnutrients. Oh my God, I can't speak today. So if I'm misspeaking, I sincerely apologize. And you could count ribs on them. The males and the females were not as plump as they should be. So it's obvious that they're not getting enough food. And if you don't have enough food, you can't have enough energy. And if you can't have enough energy, you definitely can't carry a baby to full term. And even if you do carry a baby to full term, will the mom be able to produce enough milk to feed that baby? Or when the baby if it does manage to grow up a few years, will it have enough food to even live? Food is the number one issue facing the Southern Resident Orcas right now. Another big one would be sound. And I know what you're thinking, like, sound, like they just live in the ocean. Isn't it just like whatever? Sound carries underwater. If you've never thought about it before, like if you have a swimming pool or whatever, if you go under the water, have somebody stand at the other end of the pool and like snap their fingers, or maybe have like a little bang something together, you'll hear it clear as day. Sound carries in the water, and it's no different in the ocean. The problem being is that there's so many big rig ships that are traveling back and forth there, and they are so loud. So now these whales, they have, if you think about it, they've got less food, which means they're having to hunt more, which means they're having to work harder for their food. Now with this sound pollution, they're having to scream at each other to even have that communication about where's the fish. So this is already frustrating as you think about it for a minute. If you have barely any food and now you're having to walk around more to get it, and you're having to scream at everybody, where's the food? Like, come on. There are a lot of petitions going on to try to get the sound minimized out there, but it is difficult. And also the Navy does sonar testing off the coast out there, which they do it in an endangered area. I mean, come on. And then inevitably, some kind of whale washes up on shore with blunt force trauma that's obvious that it came from a sound weapon, and they just want to, I don't know, maybe it got hit by, it did not get hit by a boat. So we need to move that. just saying. And the other side of that coin too does come from small personal boats as well, because 1 or 2 is not going to make a difference, but when there's 150, and I know a lot of them do follow the whales around because they're either whale watching boats or it's whales. You want to go and see the whales. They did pass a law a few years ago where you had to stay 200 yards away from the whales, but if they came into your 200-yard radius, you had to shut off your engine. So there's at least that, but it's not a lot. Of course, the third big one would be pollution, because that could be a whole other vlog in and of itself when we're talking about polluting waterways, between all the runoff from companies dumping their chemicals, from people flushing pharmaceuticals down the toilet, or even just washing things and having microplastics get into the ecosystem, into the water stream, everything like that. They eat that. They're in the water, and then they're eating the fish who already have that in their bodies, because that's how that works. You are your environment. And so when they're studying the whales that do happen to die, they're looking at the chemical contents of, hey, what is their bloodstream like? What is the contents inside their blubber or their fat? Like, what did it look like? And the levels are off the charts. Our water is so polluted. I don't even have words. So you've got these 3 big issues. So food is scarce, noise pollution, to where they're having to basically scream at each other to even figure out where each other are or where the food is. And then you've also got actual pollution floating around in the water. These are the 3, in my opinion, these are the 3 biggest factors contributing to why the southern residents are just dying. They're dying and they're crying out for help. I mean, nobody has ever seen an orca carry their baby around, maybe for a half a day or something if they died suddenly. 18 days, like, she carried her baby around at the surface of the water. Like, come on, you gotta wake up. So now if you're sitting at home and you're going, well, that's great, but I live in nowhere near these whales, like, but I do care because I like whales, or I want to help the environment. How do I get involved? How do I learn more? Or I want to learn more about whales. I'm going to leave a whole bunch of links down below to different organizations who are on the ground there, or that are doing research or what have you. And I'm also going to link some of my favorite books. So if you want to read more on the topic, these are some great books to start with. I'm going to put some kids books in there as well, because I do think it's important to start conservation and environmental conversations with your children as young as you can. My son, one of my sons, just say probably one of his first 10 to 15 words was orca. So I've been talking to him about stuff like this all the time. We always have conversations, and he's gonna be 22 months old here shortly. So does most of what I say go over his head? Yes, of course, but you need to have these kind of dialogues with them. And then also, because of the fact that June is Orca Awareness Month, there is a organization, orcamonth.com, that has a whole bunch of educational resources for kids of all ages. They also are doing, this year it's virtual because of everything that's happened. They're doing everything virtual. So they have a bunch of virtual webinars. I know every Friday they've got a little virtual story time where they read to the kids and everything, and it's just a lot of fun. So another thing that we're doing, because they actually recommended it, I thought it was cute, because instead of being out there where you can actually go and maybe whale watch and maybe see the whales, is put a whale up in your window. So basically color, have them have your kids or yourself draw a whale, print out a picture, color a picture, whatever, and then you put it in the window. This vlog is already getting super long. It's a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a quick vlog, and it isn't. I have a lot to say on my resident orcas. They are near and dear to my heart. If you follow me on Instagram, this whole month I'm going to share different photos and posts from other orca advocates as well, but I'm also going to be sharing my personal photos and my personal experiences that I've had with the Southern Resident Orcas, because yes, I have seen them in person. So make sure you're following me on Instagram so you'll be able to see all of that goodness. So please go and check out those resources. Donate if you can, or if you're able to. Educate your children, educate yourself, read all about it, watch all the movies. I'm not sure if Free Willy's streaming anymore. I know they used to all be on Hulu, but I know they took them off. But they're also super cheap. So if you feel like you want to watch something like that to educate your family, that's fine as well. That's it, folks. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, follow me on social media, and anything I have, I'll link it down below. All of those links that I was talking about are down below as well. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.